Las Vegas, going legitimate. There are nearly 2.3 million people in Las Vegas and the surrounding area of Clark County. Once derided as a cultural backwater, Las Vegas has evolved into an economic power that outstrips the output of whole countries. It is one of the country's leading vacation destinations, drawing far more tourists than the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone National Park. Surrounding the Strip is the 25th largest city in the United States. It is a community that may or may not be related in the gambling, tourism, and all the other unmentionables that had author Joan Didion dub it Sin City. Las Vegas functions like a city-state with a cruise liner at the core. The Las Vegas Strip is not part of the city of Las Vegas, but its own entity that is run by Clark County, where the ship never moves and there are no clocks telling the passengers to stop partying. Instead, flights from around North America descend to a city built on a swamp in the middle of the desert and drop 42.5 million people each year to spend over $58 billion. Las Vegas tourism, just like the cruise ship industry, have been among the hardest hit. The reasons around this are obvious and can be summed up in a half-hearted shrug followed by the word lockdown. However, the incredible part of Las Vegas' story is not how it has stumbled, but how it has been able to rise and reinvent itself multiple times. The Boulder Dam. Just 100 years ago, Las Vegas was a minuscule city built as a railroad stop on the way to California. The town, only meant to allow a stop for the locomotives to refill water tanks required for their steam engines, seemed to have dark days ahead of it after the stock market crash of 1929. The fortune of this backwater desert town would quickly hit a turning point. On July 3, 1930, President Herbert Hoover signed the appropriation bill for the Boulder Dam. The largest civil engineering project in American history was coming to Boulder Canyon, just outside of Las Vegas. Male construction workers and men from around the country flocked to the city of Las Vegas. Many of the men arriving here recently became disenfranchised from the actively falling stock market, and most of the men didn't have families that would have tied them to their cities of origin. When work began on the dam, these men didn't have cold water, they didn't have showers, they didn't even have bathrooms. The government established Boulder City and outlawed all gambling, prostitution, and alcohol. This, in conjunction with nearly 250,000 people traveling to the Mojave to see their eighth wonder of the world, created an overwhelming demand for, let's say, rest and relaxation. It was at this stage that the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce reached out to the owner of El Rancho Hotels, Thomas Hull. Eventually settling on a spot on Highway 91 to get the most travelers from California, Thomas Hull's Rancho Vegas would create the first casino hotel that would eventually become the iconic Vegas Strip, an ever-growing oasis of debauchery that would make the city world famous. These first casinos are legitimate casinos. They make their money through slot machines, bars, and card tables. This is a wildly successful model that each and every casino resort in Vegas would follow. Eventually, mobsters like Benjamin Bugsy Siegel started taking notice of the lucrative business far from regulatory figures. The mob creeps in. After failing to acquire the El Rancho Vegas, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel would hijack dubious business magnate William Richard "Billy" Wilkerson's plans for a hotel to create the first of the glamorous money laundering fronts on the Strip, the Flamingo. After failing to turn a profit at first, Bugsy would find himself murdered in 1947, and under the new management of more ruthless gangsters, the hotel would return tremendous profits to the mob bosses in New York, Meyer Lansky and Charles Luciano. These profits were quickly noticed by more and more casino owners. In a time when you simply couldn't take a bachelor's in casino management, almost universally these other casino owners were entrepreneurs from states where gambling was illegal. In the 50s, more kingpins like Gus Greenbaum and Mo Dalitz would bankroll additional mob ventures in the Las Vegas area. In this era, the Las Vegas Strip would begin on the second main branch of business they are known for today, with the opening of the Moulin Rouge, the first integrated casino, being one of the only places on the West Coast to see world-class black performers like Nat King Cole and Harry Belafonte, as well as world-class shows hosted at the Sands, the Sahara, the Stardust, and the Tropicana. The town found a second wind for tourist draw. The third would be the greatest fireworks display in humanity's history, thanks to the United States government. Just 60 miles away from Las Vegas, hundreds of nuclear weapons were detonated in southern Nevada, and curious Las Vegans would venture into the countryside to watch the explosions, unknowingly exposing themselves to unbelievable amounts of radiation, having possible comparable effects to the copious amounts of drugs and alcohol consumed while they were there in Las Vegas. With the American public not knowing the effects, the dubious hotel owners took advantage of the spectacle for enormous profits. This would lead to events like the Miss Atomic Bomb pageant and many resorts offering atomic cocktails, made with equal parts vodka and brandy with some dry ice for a bubbling effect. The cocktails didn't contain any radioactive materials. The tourists got enough of that watching nuclear bombs go off with nothing to protect them but their slacks and maybe their Bel Air convertible top if they were lucky. The mob recedes. The first turn away from being primarily a front for laundering money would come from completely insane and disassociated billionaire Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes, portrayed in the 2004 Scorsese drama The Aviator by Leonardo DiCaprio, had completely lost his mind at this point in his life. Selling his dying airline Trans World Airlines in 1956, he eventually took up residence in the top floor of the Desert Inn. Here, he and his entourage would thoroughly wear out their welcome with the mobster management. Trashing the room Howard was in, none of Howard's entourage gambled. Eventually, when asked to move out, Howard simply bought the struggling hotel in response. Finding himself in a tax pickle of having to pay capital gains unless he owned businesses, Howard thought that he could evade taxes by buying failing casinos in the desert strip. Howard Hughes, in a fit of genius of madness, bought half a dozen casinos from mobsters, including the Castaways, New Frontier, the Landmark Hotel and Casino, and the Sands. At this point, Las Vegas was less of a town ruled by mobsters and more of a town influenced by mobsters. After seeing the effect that a respectable businessman had on public perception of Las Vegas, government elements such as Paul Laxalt passed the corporate gaming law of 1969, paving the way for an enormous resort industry and allowing for resorts such as Hilton or Hyatt to create resorts like the modern corporate casino resorts that exist in Las Vegas today. The draw of Elvis, the king himself, at the Hilton didn't hurt either. From 1969 to 1977, Elvis would play over 800 sold-out shows that would redefine the aesthetic and economy of the town. He very much remains a symbol of the city to this very day, nearly as iconic today as he was in his heyday. As tourists flocked to watch Elvis and Liberace at the corporate casinos, regulators cracked down on mob-owned casinos such as the Stardust, Fremont, Marina, and Hacienda casinos, as seen in the 1995 film Casino. I think Martin Scorsese likes World War II and Las Vegas.
Salute.
These Chicago firms, as well as the Milwaukee and Kansas outfit-run casinos, the Fremont and the Tropicana respectively, all saw their illegal profits being squeezed by regulators. Steve Wynn, The Mirage, and Making the Modern Vegas. Steve Allen Wynn was someone with vision. He moved to Las Vegas after buying a stake in the Frontier Hotel in 1967. Someone who saw what Las Vegas was and saw that it could become a city of luxury, the city with the most limousines for its size. For the next 20 years, he would make this a reality. He would make Las Vegas more than a place to gamble, more than a place to launder and skim money. In 1989, Steve Wynn opened The Mirage, the world's largest hotel. The Mirage would become the top attractor of tourists to the city, even over the longtime titan, the Boulder Dam, now renamed to be the Hoover Dam. The Mirage would change travelers' perception of what Las Vegas was to be so much more. To survive in this new era, a casino needed to be world class, not just best in the West. Longtime icons like the Dunes, the first hotel to feature topless shows, died. However, from the corpse of the Dunes came the Bellagio, from the rubble of the Sands came the Venetian, from the Hacienda grew Mandalay Bay. The city's tourism industry grew from 15 million people annually to 35 million annually in this period of 8 years. New bets. Outside of tourism, the city has managed to attract many successful teams. In 1990, the UNLV Rebels destroyed Duke in the most lopsided game in history. A As far back as 1998, Mark and Al Davis planned to move the Oakland Raiders to Las Vegas. Both traveled to the city regularly and acquired the LasVegasRaiders.com in the late 90s. Finally seeing an opportunity to move to Las Vegas, the most ruthless franchise in the NFL moved to their new home in 2020. Even before that development, the Desert City even hosts a hockey team, finding one of the most unlikely homes possible in 2017. Las Vegas was even able to acquire the Golden Knights NHL hockey team, not to understate the popular WNBA team the Aces established in 2018. All of this in line with their strategy to diversify the economy, not further rely on the boom-bust tourism industry. Seeing how successful the NHL has been in Las Vegas, the sellout crowds and game night buzz on the Strip, loyal fanbase, and excitement created by deep playoff runs. Team owners are seeing the Clark County community boom, and local business owners such as Jay Bloom want to bring an NBA team to the city. Local business owners are tired of having years like 2020. For Las Vegas, a year where tourism doesn't exist is a 10 to 13% drop in the city's GDP. For many Las Vegans, if the tourists aren't there, they leave. The acquisition of teams gives more locals reasons to stay and fall in love with the city. This, as well as a land zoning proposal, much like the type that saw the boom of corporate casinos in the 90s, would make Las Vegas an attractive tech hub outside of San Francisco, Houston, New York, and Seattle. It's a stiff competition, but under the Innovation Zone proposal, which has yet to be formally introduced in the legislature, technology companies that own at least 50,000 acres of land and promise to invest $1 billion can create a board of supervisors over the property, overriding local county governance. Blockchains LLC, a cryptocurrency company, currently owns 67,000 acres in Story County and hopes to develop a city that runs entirely on blockchain technology. This development and the hopes of a Las Vegas NBA team are currently working through roadblocks, but they show a pattern. Esports and gaming. The recently finished esports venues, the Luxor Esports Arena and the Wall at the Rio, also demonstrate this trend that could end up being very important for the city. A long-time home of many gaming companies in the form of gambling technology companies, Las Vegas is continuing to work its way into the mainstream gaming market. Mobile studios are doing their best to the role of gambling in their products, but large studios such as Plarium, developer of Raid Shadow Legends, are already partnered with Las Vegas-based gambling gaming tech companies like Aristocrat. Las Vegas has been at the center of digital gambling technology for nearly 50 years, since the industry's creation. Gaming continues to borrow more and more techniques from digital gambling like convertible currencies. Like, come on gaming, gems are just gambling chips, except they can't be cashed out because gamers are okay with being fleeced. The expertise and software from Las Vegas gaming companies will continue to be a huge boon to more and more conventional game studios. A market with a total valuation of over $100 billion could be a perfect fit for Las Vegas to diversify away its boom-bust tourism-based woes. All of that hinges on regulators not forcefully drawing strong lines between Las Vegas's definition of gaming industry and the greater market's definition of the games industry. The takeaway we can make from these developments show that the current era of Las Vegas is one where outside smart money is betting on the future of the city. Unlike Macau, a city almost wholly dependent on its gambling and tourism with little developments to escape that role, Las Vegas is taking a greater and greater role in technology and gambling adjacent markets. They have a concrete plan coming out of COVID on how to avoid tourism busts like the one we just saw the worst of. Investors and enthusiasts should look to 2023 to 2025 for exciting new developments in Las Vegas.